Good morning. And so today is Monday, June 12th. And as part of this class, this MERN class, web development, full stack class, we're writing a lot of JavaScript. And so we went through this FreeCodeCamp and completed all of the basic JavaScript. I recommend all of the current students go through this. If they haven't yet already, go through, complete the basic JavaScript tutorials. I mean, we have to know JavaScript inside and out, and so these are just some tutorials that'll help you learn JavaScript. Now, of course, JavaScript goes through yearly changes now, and so in about 2015, you get ES6 released in 2015, and now every year JavaScript kind of has a feature release. Once a year, new features added. Wiki ECMAScript is another, it's kind of an alias, another name for JavaScript. And so you can kind of go in here and see that basically, let's see, when do they version history. And so since about 15, you could see 15, 16, 17, you see they kind of release new editions. And so ES6, you could see they call the 6th edition, and then so on and so forth. And so that's kind of where we're at, and lots of new features. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of do this, and I just recommend basically you doing this on your own. And if you get stuck, you can refer to this video for how I went about solving it. But I do, this is a self-paced tutorial. You don't need to listen or follow me, but the reason I do this is just to get you unstuck if you get stuck. So I'm going to break this into 3 parts. You get about 30, and so I'll do 10, 10, and 10 roughly into 3 different videos just to break it up. And so this is just me doing this exercise. I'm not going to be what I'd call speed running this because I'm a little less familiar with this tutorial than the other one. The other one I felt like I can go through pretty quickly, and that worked for a while until it didn't. And some of them, I guess the point is when they're harder, they take a little more time. If you're unfamiliar with let, check out the challenge between the difference in let and var. Basically don't want to use var.
Appreciate it. I didn't mean to run by and say that.
You're good. think here you just got to change both I's to lets instead of vars. And there you go. Now mine says 66% complete, but I'm just doing the first one. So you gotta set the first one to 2, second one to 5, third one to 7. So in this challenge, you are going to use object.freeze to prevent mathematical constants from cheating. You need to freeze the math constants object so that no one is able to alter the value of pi. So that froze. So here's our object, math constants, type error, can not assign to read-only property pi. Okay. What's the third one? Okay, arrow functions. So here's a function. It returns a variable. Here's a new way of declaring that function. It returns a var. This is a function, no parameters, returns the string value. Rewrite the function, which returns a new date with an arrow function syntax. Also make sure nothing is defined using var. So if I just say const magic equals empty parameters, arrow new date. So that one, that's something that I've personally taken a while to adjust to, all the different ways to declare functions. But there's a really good article on arrow functions on MDN. And I would recommend reading through this, especially like this part right here. Excuse me, this part right here. Like this little this was a good 5 minute, just like take your time through it. And that was helpful for me. Arrow functions with parameters. So now you've got the optional parentheses, right? And here's when it's only optional when there's one item, but if there's multiple items, they're no longer optional parentheses, they're required. So here's a function called multiplier, takes in 2 and returns those 2 items. Rewrite my concat, which appends the 2 things. Okay. Const my concat equals AR1, AR2, arrow, AR1 dot concat AR2. All right. So again, just to break this up today into different pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 more. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Destructuring to assign variables from objects is where we're going to get. Set default parameters for your functions. Okay, so you know, a parameter is something you send into a function. It's the function input, if you will. And this is ways that, okay, if you don't send something in, it'll assume a default value of anonymous. And so like here, greeting would be anonymous. Here, greeting would be John. And so modify increment by adding default parameters. So we'll add 1 to number if value is not specified. So value equals 1, and that gives it a default value. Pretty cool. Okay, REST parameters. And so again, parameters are your inputs. REST parameter are these 3 dots. And so those, 3 dots can be either the REST parameter when it's used in a parameter sense, but there's also, using the 3-dot notation, called the spread operator, which we've used that, and you'll see that again here. So this is the REST parameter. The REST parameter for function parameters. With REST parameter, you create functions that take a variable number of arguments. And so in C# they called this a params array. So it's like one input, but you could pass 1 value into it or 10. And or an array is just a very flexible parameter. You could pass all sorts of data into it. These arguments are stored in an array that can be accessed from inside the function. So here you pass 3 ints, or 3 number types, into how many, and it would say you pass 3 arguments. And here you would pass a string, 2, you could pass an array and an empty object, and it would pass 4. So the first function call says you passed 3, the next one you passed 4. The REST parameter eliminates the need to use arguments object, and allows us to use array methods on the array of parameters passed into the functions. How many? Modify the sum using the REST parameter in such a way the function sum can take any number of arguments and return their sum. So ... and just follow their example, args, and return their sum. So you would just loop through there. Now, I don't at this point need that args. We've got these args. Total is that, return that. All right, so just to point this out, like I'm not sure what this was doing before, but here's our input. It can take any number of inputs, and you could send 5 numbers in or 10 numbers in or 20 numbers in. You loop through those numbers and accumulate them with this variable called total. So total is called an accumulator, which is just a value that goes up every time you go through a loop. Okay, and remember I just said the rest operator, the spread operator, is a little bit different. Use the spread operator to evaluate arrays in one place. ES6 introduced the spread operator, which allows us to expand arrays and other expressions in place where multiple parameters are expected. ES5, so here you've got 4, and they run this function math.max, and it finds the value of 89. So Maximus would pull out of this array the max value. We had to use that because mathmax array returns not a number. Math.max expects comma separated arguments, but not an array. The spread operator can make this syntax better and easier to read and maintain. Math.max, and so you're kind of like breaking the array down one at a time. You're spreading it apart, if you will. And so it's, you're spreading each element apart, and it's going to return 89 just the same. We use the spread operator a lot. I think we've already used it a time or two in this class. So this is a good one to get familiar with. ARR returns an unpacked array. In other words, it spreads the array. However, the spread operator only works in place, like an argument to a function, or in an array literal. For example, here, spreaded in an array literal. So here, because you don't have the brackets around it, it's not an array literal. Okay, copy all the contents of array 1 into another array 2 using the spread operator. So simple enough, ARR1. And so useful in the sense that you can copy an array. And so this is a very normal use case of the spread operator. It's like, hey, I just want to copy the elements out of one array into another array. And we've done that where it's like, hey, we can spread arrays. You can also spread objects, which I think we'll probably do here. Object destructuring. So destructuring is kind of what it sounds like. I said you could spread objects, but maybe it's destructure. So the idea is like, hey, here's our object called high temperatures, and you've got these pieces of data. And destructuring is like, hey, I just want to pull out some pieces of that object. And so typically, it's like, hey, I want to read a piece of data here. And so you use the object name, use the dot notation property. So it's object.property to read today. But here, using curlies, you could see another syntax for doing that. So here's our user. Here's the traditional way of reading data out. Here's an equivalent assignment using destructuring. So we get a name variable that matches the name property and an age variable that matches the age property. And this creates two variables called name and age. You can extract as many or as few as values from objects that you want. Replace the two assignments for today and tomorrow using, okay, so we're going to do const, and this is destructuring today, comma, tomorrow, Tom or row equals high temperatures. And this is destructuring this object to make two variables called today and tomorrow that holds those two pieces of data, which are today's 77, tomorrow's 80. So where do we see this? Well, we see this on our line on our import statements, right? We're importing variables from objects from other JavaScript files, and so definitely destructure quite a bit in our JavaScript apps. Destructure objects. And I think this was number 10, so I'll stop after this one just to break it up. Use destructuring assignment to assign variables from objects. Using the same object, this guy. Here's how you can give new variable names. Okay, so name and age. So we're calling name equal to username. So our new variable name is username. And our new thing here is user age. Replace the two assignments, hi today and hi tomorrow, with today and tomorrow. From high temperatures. It should still assign the variables hi today and hi tomorrow to the values of today and tomorrow. Okay. So I think const today, comma, tomorrow, but they don't want the variables to be called today and tomorrow. We're gonna hi today, colon, hi tomorrow, equal all right. We'll stop right here and break this up into a few parts.